The Dallas Cowboys have signed Martavis Bryant to the practice squad. Will he have a role in this offense sooner rather than later? All that and more this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. We are answering your Twitter questions today, and we got about 50 of them asking us about Martavis Bryant, the newly acquired Dallas Cowboys receiver. Landon, what do you think his role is going to be on this team right away?
Well, I'm pretty sure before the show that you said that he thought he was going to be the best Bryant receiver since Antonio Bryant. So let's see.
My favorite.
That held out. Look, I think this is a classic Will McClay lottery ticket, right? This is a guy that, was a phenomenon in the league at different points. Obviously is the kind of classic. I mean, frankly, Josh Gordon keeps coming up in my brain every time I think about him, right? It's that sort of mercurial, talented wide receiver that, couldn't stay on the field due to the NFL's rules and bylaws, which at this point have now been eliminated. The reason that he lost his career for the last 4 years. So he just got reinstated. I think it was 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. And he started reaching out to teams. He's had a little bit of a career at the XFL. He's played a little bit in the CFL, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And so he's been playing some kind of form of football for a while. He posted a video of a workout that he did recently that showed some GPS tracking that shows he can still kind of get hit close to 22 miles an hour. So he can still run at least. Look, I think you and I have had a kind of extensive conversation about this last night after it happened. And I think the range of outcomes here is pretty wide, but I think that ultimately early on, he's going to be a practice squad player. He's probably going to need to work himself into actual football shape, I would say. And so I don't imagine that his impact is going to be immediate. But if he is going to make some waves as a actual offensive player or as a game day active roster player, I would imagine that it would probably be closer to December than it is in Thanksgiving or the middle of this month. I just think that look, when you're big, when you're 6'4" and you can run like that, can you still do things? I think you definitely can. The question is, where are the other aspects of his game? Where is his vertical explosion? Where's his strength? Where's his his actual skill? That's, I think, what we're going to find out here in the next few weeks.
All right. So just really quickly, if you're not familiar with Martavis, because this was like a decade ago, the last time he played in the NFL, just to kind of fill you in on what kind of player he was, because I was fortunate enough to see him with the Raiders, and then being here near Pittsburgh, I got to see him a lot.
Go on. What team did you see them with?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
The Voodoo Steelers. So basically with Martavis, it was 9 routes, slants, and any kind of crossers, right? Where you can get him using his speed. And when he was healthy and he was playing, he was unbelievable. He was the best Steelers receiver for about a 7 to 8 game stretch. He was outproducing Antonio Brown when Brown was at his peak. Okay. Just remember, that's how good he was for a little bit. His ability to make plays down the field is insane. It's just been a while since we've seen that player. That's when he was like 23, 24 years old. He's 31 now. We were talking about this yesterday. I just have a hard time seeing a path for him on the active roster for a couple reasons. Number one, he hasn't played special teams in his life, whether that was in the XFL, CFL, NFL, college, or high school. Like, he just doesn't offer anything there. And your top 4 receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, and then Jalen Tolbert does play special teams, but those are your top 4 guys.
as the weeks go on. Yeah.
Kevontae Turpin's going to be active every single week because he does play special teams and he's getting more run on offense. So where does he fit in? I don't see the Cowboys deactivating Michael Gallup to put Martavis Bryant on the field, but that's probably what would have to happen, or somebody would have to get hurt in order for him to even think about getting a helmet on game day.
Or that you'd have to like go short at another position, right? Like at tight end, or maybe...
Which you could do. Could you keep 6 receivers active? Could you keep 7 receivers? Because they have 6 on the roster right now, with Jalen Brooks being the 6th guy, right? Could you have 7 guys on your active roster?
Or you could call him up, right, as a practice squad guy for a couple of games to see. I mean, it depends on what the situation is, right? Like, is this an injury like insurance situation, or is this a, hey, like, he's really been showing out in practice, this looks like a guy we can use, now we got a decision make kind of.
The reason I don't think it's that is we just got a quote from him in the locker room where he said, "I'm going to need a few weeks to get in shape."
Oh yeah, no, I don't look. Let's be clear right now. He's on the practice squad. I don't think he's going to be on the active roster soon. Like this,
No.
The conversation we're having right now is what happens when he gets into game shape, and if when he gets there, he actually looks like a player. Then it's like, how do we figure out the roster gymnastics to get him up into the game day?
I just look at this as like a lesser version of the T.Y. Hilton signing last year, where you signed T.Y. Hilton, was it after Thanksgiving, got him ready so he could play, was it the week before Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah.
And you got him kind of a run just in case you needed him. To me, that's probably like the most optimistic view. Part of me just thinks, Landon, you look at their practice squad receivers, and it's Tyron Johnson and Jalen Moreno-Cropper, who are basically like slot only guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the only 2 guys on the practice squad. And maybe they just wanted to add somebody with a little bit more size and speed to give them some different looks as they go into this next, 4-game stretch.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that's why I was saying I think the outcomes here are incredibly wide. From he's just a useful practice squad player who is great for game, for game reps, like to get ready for the game, or eventually maybe he actually does become a player who you can roster. I think ultimately the issue becomes like, how do you get him on the roster, even if you wanted to, right? It's going to have to be injury based, I would imagine.
Yeah, because we're already talking about how we want to see Jalen Tolbert get more reps. Every time Kevontae Turpin's on offense, it seems like good things are happening. So I don't see a role right now for him. I know there's been some other NFL insiders that say the Cowboys have a role ready for him. I just don't know if I buy that.
It would definitely take some reconfiguring. I mean, you definitely would have to reconfigure the roster a little bit. Some folks that are not playing as many special teams would have to play more. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that makes this the thing that makes this situation weird is where the rubber meets the road. Like the actual, like, how does the guy fit into the roster? How does he fit onto a game day, roster? How do you elevate him and or still have the bodies you need at all the special teams positions if you're taking away another guy that can't play special teams? And then what happens if you do all that and one of your special teams players gets injured in the game? So it's like you have to consider all that stuff. So it's not easy. I think, like I said, it's a lottery ticket, but I think the key thing to think about is that it's a lottery ticket that they put in their pocket. So
it costs them nothing, right? Like,
yeah, and I think December is when you circle back to see, hey, did any of these numbers hit? And if they did, maybe you find a way to do this and it works. If it didn't, you just hold on to them and see what happens.
They've extended the practice squad to 16 players now. This is the reason why. So you can take shots on players like Martavis Bryant, give him a month to get in shape and to learn the offense. And if we get to December and it's, hey, he's just not working out, you cut him and you move on. And it doesn't cost you a draft pick, doesn't cost you on the salary cap. Why not? These are smart upside signings by Will McClay in the front office. You might as well gamble on somebody who was as dominant as Martavis Bryant 5-6 years ago. Landon, let's talk about some of the contract decisions that the Cowboys have made over the last couple of years. And if it's coming back to bite them on the field, we will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, in their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. The all-in prices show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without all the hidden fees. You can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps on your phone. I absolutely love Gametime. It's what I use to buy all my tickets. Now, you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. All you have to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off after you create an account and redeem that promo code. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Tanisha Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and so much more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Lana, let's get to some more questions. This one from Jay. He wants to know, why do the Cowboys insist on paying hurt guys? Should they reconsider their strategy here?
I don't know. I mean, I think this is not like a widespread, thing. I think it's been 3 key players, right, that have kind of fallen under this. One of which I think is regrettable now, by the way they've played, Gallup. But Terrence Steele just signed his deal. He came off a major knee injury. They have full insight into exactly what happened with him. And it's a guy that has earned that contract. So I'm not certainly – I think people are writing Steele off too early. This is 9 games into this contract, and he's coming off a major knee injury that, most of the people that are complaining about the way he played said he wouldn't even get back from in time. So I have a hard time writing Steele off at this point. I think you and I had a conversation before the show about, retroactively looking at what happened with Pollard and the franchise tag and everything. I think the Cowboys kind of got screwed there a little bit by the timing of things, right? Like, because they knew they wanted to hold on to Pollard. Pollard was definitely one of the top names, if not the top name, in the running back market when it came. And the other guy that was kind of at the market there too was, Barkley. So I think that the Cowboys made a decision based on what they felt like was going to happen in the market with the franchise tag. The market then abruptly just cratered right afterwards. I think it wasn't too long after that you saw some of these re-signing contracts, and they were just, pathetic.
Yeah,
and
David
so
Montgomery,
Sanders. I'm sorry. Yeah, I couldn't remember which one it was, but
both of those guys got way less than what people were projecting them on the open market.
Which, I mean, maybe Pollard still commands more than those guys because Pollard was still considered a better free agent, I think, universally. But I think it just, the timing of that kind of just didn't work out in the Cowboys' favor. But look, I think if we're power ranking, if we're reverse power ranking these by which one is the worst of these, injury contracts or whatever, I think the Gallup one is clearly the worst one. But the Pollard one, I think it was something you felt like you kind of had to do, or you could have ended up paying more money on the other side. It just didn't work out that way. And then on the Steele thing, it's just early. I think he's coming back from this knee injury. I think people, kind of, they look at the latest game and then they project that out as like the future forever. Steele is going to get better. He's going to recover more from his knee. He's going to get more confidence, and he's going to play better football. I really do believe that. So it's hard for me to write off that one. I definitely can understand some frustration over the Gallup one, and the Pollard one's kind of timing wise. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't think that this is a strategy the Cowboys need to abandon. It's not always going to work. Even the ones where you sign guys before they're injured don't always work.
Well,
So
I'll give you another one. And this one's a little lower stakes, but The Cowboys signed Leighton Vander Esch to a pretty reasonable deal this offseason. Was it like 2 years, $8 million? But again, that was him coming off of an injury last year where he missed the final, was it like month of the season with a neck injury? He played 4.5 games this year. And then we had Stephen Jones yesterday saying, we still don't know if he's going to come back this year. Is that another one where the Cowboys probably should have just moved on and been like, hey, we were lucky to get you back for the playoffs, but we don't need to invest any more money into this situation?
Maybe, but I think that there was something to the idea of what was the alternative if you didn't get Leighton Vander Esch in the room, right? Like it may have been a worse situation if you didn't have another linebacker in there. So I don't know. I think there certainly is something to the idea that obviously there is downside to signing injured players. I mean, the upside is that you get more talented players on cheaper contracts when you do that. And if we're looking at it from a 10,000 foot view, the Cowboys have a very talented roster, and part of that is being able to kind of steal talented players here and there through unconventional means, right?
Well, let's give an example of when it's worked, right? The Cowboys were able to sign DeMarcus Lawrence to a very, very team-friendly deal. Was it last offseason? And that's because DeMarcus Lawrence is coming off a foot injury where he broke his foot during the 2021 season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Missed a good chunk of that season. And now you've got somebody who's playing really good football at half of the price that he probably should be going for. So it's not like the Cowboys are batting 0% here on signing injured guys to long-term deals. Just to be fair.
I mean, do we need to mention the number one guy here, the injured guy that we signed to a long-term contract? Because I'm pretty sure that Dak Prescott played pretty good in that game the other night against the Eagles. So
yeah, they just didn't really get a discount on that one. But yeah, I think it's a fair point.
It looks like a discount right now. That's the thing about quarterback contracts is that they always look expensive at the time. But I think, the idea, if the idea is not to sign injured players, I mean, Dak's injury was pretty terrible.
Pretty gnarly.
They signed him and it worked out pretty good. So, I think the number, they didn't get the discount because he is still a franchise quarterback, but the point still stands.
I do think I'd like to see the Cowboys be just a little bit more cautious giving out these deals. And listen, we've seen them before take the approach of we're willing to let players play out their deals, and we're going to pay more on the back end to have a little bit more comfort of knowing what the player is. And I think DeMarcus Lawrence is a great example, right? They tagged him, was it twice? And then gave him a long-term deal because basically they wanted him to show that he is an elite edge rusher. They did the same thing with Dak. I'm probably more in favor of that because it does seem like when the Cowboys try to sign some of these players early or off of, injuries, trying to get a little bit of the discount, more often than not, I don't think it ends up having some of the advantages that they hope for.
Yeah. I think ultimately what it is that they're just trading the uncertainty of injury situations, even that they feel like they have better knowledge of, than the uncertainty of, how is this player going to fit into our scheme? How is this player going to fit into our system? How is this player going to fit into our locker room? And I think that's not a universal thing. I think they pick their spots, right? So, I definitely think that they've hit some losses here and there on doing this, but I also think that it's not a strategy that they should completely abandon.
No, because it is how you can get some really, really good discounts. And in the case of like DeMarcus Lawrence, it's how you were able to sign somebody like Dorrance Armstrong to a second contract, is because of the savings there. So again, not completely opposed to them doing that, but maybe just scale it back just a tiny bit. Maybe you don't need to give out 2 or 3 of these deals in the same offseason.
Let's scale back the injuries. How about that? Let's scale back that'd be a better option if we could do that.
All right. Speaking of Tony Pollard, should the Cowboys consider giving his backup more touches? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order in with DoorDash. It's at halftime. That is ordering in time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That is your cue to order in. Why root for your favorite team on an empty stomach? Order on DoorDash and save on your football watch party favorites. Order pizza, wings, sodas, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Get prepared before game day. Stock up on all of your favorite appetizers and order all of your tailgate gear on DoorDash. Then get ready to watch your team win. If you're out in Dallas, out in Arlington, there's so many great places to order DoorDash in. I love 24/7 tacos. I love nothing more than tacos on game day. Check out some of the absolutely amazing restaurants. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23. Subject to change, terms apply. Again, make sure you're using that promo code LOCK23 to get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Subject to change, terms apply. All right, Landon, we've got time for one more question here. This one comes from Marty MC Superfly. Great name.
I love that. That's great.
Is it time to give Rico Dowdle some more opportunities on offense?
Well, Mike doesn't think so. McCarthy came out yesterday that someone specifically asked him that question, and I think he was more just annoyed with the previous two questions, and that's why he didn't answer it like that. I think that, again, I still can't explain it. I still don't understand it, but I think that Tony Pollard played his best half of football in that second half of that Eagles game. So, but there's still half a season left. So, yeah, I mean, I do think it's good to give Dowdle more carries simply because there's going to be a lot of carries left in the season, and you don't want Pollard to just, get lit up like a Christmas tree with carries, And so, I do think that Dowdle has shown that he is more than capable, right? That he is more than capable to take carries and to be a kind of positive influence in the run game and be able to be a physical presence between the tackles when, the Cowboys don't necessarily get that all the time from Pollard, right? And I think that kind of change of pace element really does help the offense, So I think that Pollard has shown a little bit more explosiveness, a little bit more juice, I think, like I said, the last half. So I do want to kind of see that and see him avail himself of that a little bit more. But it's hard not to look at what Rico has done in limited carries and not be, excited to see him get some more carries, some more opportunities. And again, if it makes sense in conjunction with trying to give Pollard some relief, I don't really understand why. I think the question to McCarthy was more of a fantasy football kind of question, it felt like, and I think that's how he responded to it. But I have a hard time believing that we're not going to see Dowdle potentially get some more carries as the season goes on, just simply because, football starts to get tougher. You want a more physical presence, and you don't want to overdo Pollard when we get to the later part of the season. We're really going to need him against these really tough teams.
This one's complicated for me because, like, in a vacuum, I want to see him get more touches. He had 2 carries on Sunday. He had 3 carries. One got called back because of the Schoonmaker holding call. But so, do I want to see him get more than 2 carries? Absolutely. But it's not like Pollard's getting 27 touches a game and Dowdle's getting 2. Tony Pollard had 12 carries in this game, 3 receptions. Against the Rams, 12 carries, 1 catch. Like, we're struggling to even get Tony Pollard 15, 16 touches a game. So do you all of a sudden want to take Pollard down from 15 down to 11? Probably not. And I also don't really want to take the ball out of Dak's hands, right? Like we saw Dak play awesome when you just give him the ball and let him kind of run the offense. I don't know. I want to see him get to like 6 or 7 touches a game, but anything more than that, I think, is maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah, and this is maybe why you thought about looking into running backs at the trade deadline, is because you felt like if you wanted to run the football more, that you might want more juice there. But the Cowboys didn't do that, and ultimately, what they did do instead is play a game in which they played their most important opponent, and they threw the football. What was it, like 35 times, and only ran it 15 times? So. I think the Cowboys, as much as we talk about the Cowboys being a running team, like I think you and I have pointed out from the beginning, that's a lie. They want to run the ball efficiently, and I think it's important for Pollard to be part of that. But I think that this is a passing team. And if you look at the efficiency by formation, 11 personnel, 10 personnel, those are the most efficient personnel groupings that the Cowboys have right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the run game just hasn't been where it needs to be. And I don't think that that's necessarily a Pollard issue.
I would also be more inclined to have the Cowboys run the ball, like try to get 25, 26 carries a game if their defense was holding like elite opponents to 16, 17 points a game. Like if the Eagles only scored 17 points in this game and the Cowboys held them to, let's say, 7 points in the first half, then I get it. But when the Eagles are scoring touchdowns on their first 3 drives of the game, you kind of really can't afford just to try to play that ground and pound style of offense. I think the Cowboys are at their best when Dak Prescott is controlling the pace and you're giving him the ball and you're letting him throw the ball on first down. He's averaging like 9.5 yards per attempt on first down this season. I'd rather just see Dak do that and then mix in the Pollard and Dowdle touches and try to get those guys to combine 24 touches as the game goes on rather than making them the focal point of the offense.
I'm pretty sure that they're the number one team. The Cowboys are the number one team in EPA per play when they're in empty formation.
I mean, it's not a surprise.
So, and honestly, like, just think about in your own history, right? Like when Dak is in empty, the offense works a lot, So, yeah, I do think that Pollard, does need some help with Rico just to kind of keep the touches down. But I also think that, like we've said, like this is not last year really, where Pollard and Zeke were both getting 12 carries a game. Like the running backs are getting something like 15 carries a game, 16 carries a game total, and then on top of that, Pollard gets like maybe 3 or 4 touches in the pass game, So I think Dowdle has got a pretty hefty role considering how little the usage is. But I do think that there might be some benefit in just kind of giving him maybe an uptick in the percentage of those carries as the season goes on.
I do think we're coming into this stretch that we always have every year where the Cowboys end up playing 3 games in 12 days or whatever.
Yeah.
I got a feeling that's when you're going to see more of Dowdle. When you have that stretch where is it what they play at Carolina and then they play home against Washington. And then I believe it's home against Seattle the following week. Like that's probably the time to give Dowdle some more work and maybe scale back. Maybe not even Pollard's touches, but just the number of snaps. So he's not having to be on every single pass blocking 3rd down snap or whatever. I got to believe that his snaps are going to go up over the next couple of weeks. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Every dayers. On tomorrow's show, we've got the crossover show with Patricia Traina from Locked On Giants. That's quite the episode, so make sure you tune in for that. You can follow the show on YouTube. We post shows every single day over there. Again, we'll be back on Friday to break down this Cowboys-Giants game. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you next time.